At 9:31 a.m, a member of the public called police saying a car had hit someone at the Heaton Park Hebrew Congregation synagogue and a man had been stabbed. At 9:34, firearms officers were deployed as they received further reports from the public that a security guard had been attacked with a knife. By 9:37, the scene of the attack was declared a major incident with terrorism a possible motive. And by 9:38, shots were fired by firearms officers at the suspect. He died at the scene, which was then cleared by bomb disposal experts. Our North of England correspondent Claire Fallon has been following the story throughout the day. Claire.
Well, Jackie, you used the words utter devastation, and on an evening when I think many people will be really struggling to find the words for what happened here earlier today, that does very much tally with the just appalling accounts that I've been hearing from people during the course of the day, the images that we've been seeing of the aftermath. This was clearly an extraordinarily violent attack. A car being used as a weapon, then people being stabbed, and also then I've been hearing these accounts of how the attacker tried to get in to the synagogue, as well as hearing, those really deeply disturbing details. There are also details of real bravery here today as people tried to barricade themselves inside and protect the children who were in there. Andy Burnham today has described it as an exemplary blue light response in reference to the speeds that you were talking about. And I should say that my film this evening does start with some images that may well be upsetting. Outside a synagogue in North Manchester this morning.
Everybody else, get back! If you're not involved, move back!
The man on the ground with police guns aimed at him seems to be holding something.
He's got a bob on him. He's got a bob.
A few minutes earlier, a car had been rammed into people before the driver got out and started stabbing them.
No, he's got a bob. Get the up. He's trying to press the button.
Now he's down, but when he starts to get up, an armed officer shoots him. This image from moments earlier shows the man outside the synagogue. Police have since confirmed they're treating what happened as a terror attack. An attack in which we now know 2 of the victims were fatally injured. Another 4 people are in hospital with serious injuries.
This terrorist rammed the gates, got to the front door and was absolutely banging on it. He had a knife and he was
behind the line, sorry.
Early morning I heard loud bangs and then plenty of sirens. As the thing, like the police wouldn't even allow us out the flat, and then later knocked on the doors and just said, you gotta get out.
That the attack happened today on Yom Kippur, the most holy of days for the Jewish faith, is surely no coincidence. It meant the Heaton Park synagogue was busy with many people praying inside, including young children. They were later led away by police as the exclusion zone was widened and bomb disposal teams went in.
Excuse me, can you move further down behind the lights corner?
Only after a controlled explosion were they able to confirm that the suspect was dead and that what appeared to be a suicide vest was not a viable explosive device.
This attack has been officially declared as a terrorist incident, and the investigation is now being led by counter-terrorist police. As has been confirmed by CT policing, we believe that the identity of the offender has been established, but until we are certain of this fact, it is premature to set out this detail at this juncture. In addition, I can confirm that 2 other individuals have been arrested in connection with this incident, and urgent inquiries are ongoing.
This street is about 500 metres away from the synagogue, and just towards the end of this cul-de-sac, there's a house with a lot of police coming and going from it. There's armed officers outside it. We think that a house down there is being searched at the moment. The response to today's attack will be as much about politics as policing. And with the Prime Minister flying back early from a meeting of European leaders in Copenhagen, this afternoon he attended a COBRA meeting at Downing Street.
And while this is not a new hate, this is something Jews have always lived with, we must be clear. It is a hatred that is rising once again, and Britain must defeat it once again. On behalf of the nation, I want to offer my condolences to the families and victims affected.
After these events, and given the global context, police patrols are being stepped up across the country. While here, in an area of North Manchester with the biggest Jewish community of anywhere in the UK outside London, even with extra security and messages of reassurance, it seems for some, the place that's been home may not be for much longer.
And I believe that this is something that will change our lives forever, that's for sure. You know, whether it's myself, my children, we will not be around for long in this country.
What do you mean by that?
I think we'll all be emigrating. I think there's no place for us.
What comes next, how people respond, will be of crucial importance.
Well, Dame Louise Ellman is Vice President of the Jewish Leadership Council and was an MP in Liverpool for 22 years. She resigned from the Labour Party during the rows over anti-Semitism under Jeremy Corbyn, but later rejoined, and she joins me now. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. You attended this synagogue as a child. You were married there. As events unfolded today, what was going through your mind?
Well, I'm horrified at what's happened, something that many of us in the Jewish community feared might happen because of the rising levels of anti-Semitism and hate speech, almost normalised. But it's also very personal. This is the area I was brought up in. I attended Heaton Park Synagogue as a child and I was married there. So it's very personal as well, a very difficult day and a dreadful time for all of us.
And on this day in particular, I mean, a horrific attack whenever it might have happened, but today for Jewish people, added poignancy.
Yes, I mean, today, Yom Kippur, the Jewish Day of Atonement, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. So again, it was killing Jews at prayer, Jews in the synagogue, a horrendous situation. Probably the product of the hate speech that so many of us have experienced, but a terrible day and a terrible happening.
I mean, you touch on a point that I've heard again and again today, that many Jewish people felt there was an inevitability about an attack like this.
There's been a growing fear in the community over many months now about the possibility of an attack like this. The hatred shown towards Jewish people has almost been normalised, and people hearing hate speech on the streets, children worried in schools, students at universities, and even people going to hospitals worried about things they hear and badges that members of our NHS were wearing until very recently. So there's been a build-up of fear and of concern, but of course no one really expects something to happen, particularly in their own area.
So as you say, this is in your area, it is very close to home, but the response to this will spread throughout the Jewish community in this country, won't it?
Yes, this is what's been feared for a long time. And a lot of Jewish people are upset, but they're also angry. And we're also saying that, will people now take notice of the growing development of hatred towards Jewish people that so many of us have heard and have experienced?
I mean, obviously the last 2 years have been difficult for many people on both sides of the war in Gaza. What can be done to better protect the Jewish community? And an understanding that people have different views, but that debate has to be done safely for everyone.
Well, the war in Gaza is a truly dreadful war. Many innocent people are being killed, and it started by terrorists murdering over 1,000 Israelis in their homes. But we all want that war to end. But whatever your views on that, it cannot be a reason or any possible justification for murdering Jews in their house of worship. It's appalling. And we need to think about what's happening here in this country. We don't want hate normalised. Clearly security needs to be increased even more than it is. But we need to look at what people are saying, ask people to think about what they're doing, and look about the difference between freedom of speech and the freedom to develop hatred towards individuals.
And that is absolutely a talking point at the moment on many issues, not just the Gaza conflict. Who should lead on this, though? Because that issue of language has been laid at the doors of various politicians recently, of all politicians.
Well, the government have to look at what's happening and look through the police and through the security services, just what is going on and what should be stopped. And of course it has to be looked at everywhere. What's happening in our hospitals, in the National Health Service. Wes Streeting, the Secretary of State for Health, very recently said he had no confidence in the way the health service was dealing with hate crimes, specifically with anti-Semitism. So it's about people who are in charge of our institutions as well. And the Jewish community itself just wants to be heard, not just heard, but its fears acted on.
But it is exactly as you say for many people, and it's a difficult argument on a terrible day, that how do you protect people's right to protest? How do you protect people's right on both sides of the argument to engage in debate at the same time as making sure, absolutely making sure the Jewish community is protected?
We have to listen to people when they say they are concerned, and the Jewish community for many months now has been saying they're very concerned about what we regard as hate speech, affecting how people think about Jewish people, affecting the security and the confidence of Jewish people and Britain's loyal Jewish community.
And just briefly, but specifically, how is that done? At the same time, we know we've also seen a rise in Islamophobia. This is a very multicultural, multi-faith area. That issue of hate impacts many people, doesn't it? So what specifically can the government do?
The government can look at the laws to see if we do have laws against hate, but are they always enforced? We need to look at how policing is conducted. Freedom of speech, yes, but when does a boundary come between freedom of speech and inciting hatred? We need to look about education and about people understanding in our schools what hatred is, what racism is, what anti-Jewish racism is. We don't want hate for anybody, and it's about education, it's about the government and about security forces and about people being responsible citizens.
Dame Louise Ellman, thanks very much for talking to us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, in response to the attack, politicians have been calling for patience and restraint while investigations continue. In the last half an hour, the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, has thanked the emergency services here in Manchester for their work and said her prayers were with the victims.
We will do whatever is required to keep our Jewish community safe. I know that there are many questions that are still to be answered, and rest assured they will be answered as quickly as possible. It will just take a little time for us to establish exactly what has happened here, but we will share more information as soon as we are able to. What I do want to say is to those who seek to divide us, they will fail.
Tonight, our first thoughts are with the families of those people who died, those injured, and those traumatised by this and horrific anti-Semitic attack on our Jewish friends and neighbours. We condemn it outright. We will never let acts that are designed to cause hatred, division in our communities, violence, we will never let them succeed. And that's our message tonight to everybody across Greater Manchester. Do not let them succeed. Respond by reaching out, by redoubling efforts to work together and stand together in these difficult times.
Well, so Keir Starmer cut short his attendance at a meeting of European leaders in Denmark to discuss Russia's drone incursions into NATO airspace. He rushed back to London to chair a COBRA meeting after the Manchester attack. Let's go now to our correspondent Amelia Jen in Westminster. Amelia.
Well, as you say, he rushed back from Copenhagen, arriving at Downing Street just before 4 and chairing an hour-long COBRA meeting there. He was joined by the Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy, by the Metropolitan Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley, and also the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, who joined remotely from Manchester. She'd been visiting police there to get an operational update. But even before he boarded the plane in Denmark, he announced that there would be further police deployed to synagogues across the country. He said the government would do everything in its power to keep the Jewish community safe. And following that COBRA meeting, he made another direct appeal to Jewish communities, saying this country would wrap its arms around them. He spoke of the daily threat of anti-Semitic hatred that means that Jewish buildings, synagogues and even schools required round-the-clock security. And he said that hatred was rising and must be defeated. Now, we understand that police have been mobilised across the country, patrols have been stepped up, and of course one of the things that will have been discussed discussed at that COBRA meeting is whether JTAC, that's the independent organisation that assesses the terror threat, will be upgrading it from substantial. That's what it is at the moment. That's level 3 out of 5. And of course, another consideration will be whether this man was acting alone or as part of a group.
Amelia, thank you very much indeed. Well, joining me now is Nick Aldworth. He is the former National Coordinator for Counter-Terror Policing. Thank you very much for coming to the studio, Nick. As the government is trying to reassess the terror threat, what will they be looking at, and how likely do you think it is we're going to raise this to another level?
That's a great question, and they'll be looking for what intelligence they have at the moment and whether any of it is connected to this individual or their associates, and whether any of that connection is uncontrolled, i.e. we don't know where they are, we don't have some sort of element of coercive state control over them. But they'll also be looking at the broader chatter, and is this mobilising people that we know have violent tendencies or extreme thoughts? Are they getting excited by what they've seen? Because we saw this previously. We saw an attack on the 22nd of March 2017 become the mobiliser for 4 other attacks afterwards.
So it's quite possible that there might be copycat attacks, or what I think the authorities call marauding terrorist attacks, so other people getting involved.
I think these things do have a potential to be a trigger. But also, you know, we are in a much better place than we were back in 2017 in terms of how we understand that thinking, who we're watching. We are in a much better place to respond. And interestingly, you know, these high holy days are actually very, very well protected.
Which is why the response was so quick?
Potentially, yeah. Certainly in London, we used to have an operation in place, which was probably the second or third largest operation that we actually run in London, second to places like Notting Hill and New Year's Eve. Hundreds of officers out protecting the Jewish community.
I mean, the Israeli Foreign Minister, Gideon Saar, blamed the UK government today. He said they have failed to curb the toxic wave of anti-Semitism that is on the rise, directly linking that to this attack. Is it fair to lay that blame on the British government?
Well, look, the great thing about being a cop is you just get to pick up the pieces. You don't get to worry about the politics. I think we all know we live in a very polarised binary world now, and people seek justification for violence in the most extreme and unusual ways.
I mean, the emotions generated by what's happened since October the 7th are extremely intense on both sides. How does one, as a police officer, how do you tell the difference between stuff online that is offensive and possibly even inciting to violence and an actual plan to do something terrible?
So it's hard. It's not straightforward. And one of the great challenges of fighting terrorism now is that we live in a world where people stay out of view of the security services. They stay at home. They radicalise themselves online by looking at material that they find in the darkest parts of the web. And it's that sort of lone actor, as we call it, terrorism, that's the most predominant feature in terrorism at the moment in the UK and globally, actually, certainly in Europe. We don't have that inspired and motivated terrorism that we had in the days of Islamic State and Al-Qaeda. It's not to say it's gone away, but the predominant feature is people finding material and, for whatever reason, motivating themselves into thinking their response to that needs to be violent.
I mean, the Jewish community has been warning about a rise in anti-Semitism, vociferously for the last 2 years. Do you know if the authorities have matched that with increasing surveillance of anti-Semitism and, broadened their net of inquiry into who might be behind these things?
Well, so I think if you look at the statistics, the fact that we've shown a recorded rise in hate crime and in anti-Semitic crime, that certainly says to me that the police have been receiving the information, and what they've been doing with it, I'm afraid I'm not really qualified to comment on any longer. But what I do know is this is a day that we feared and felt would come. We'd certainly seen it come in Europe in the past. And because of that, we've always had this comprehensive approach to protecting the Jewish community. And in particular, there's an organisation called the Community Security Trust, CST, who are very strongly funded by government and who have security officers.
And they were present, yes, today, weren't they?
They were present today, and the security officer, I believe, that was present was funded as part of that programme. They are there to protect the Jewish community in the places where the Jewish community assembles, ostensibly being synagogues and schools.
Right. There are hundreds of synagogues and Jewish schools, thousands around the country. I mean, how do they now stay safe in the coming days where we might get copycat attacks?
So one of the things I saw in today's attack, or the response to the attack, was quite clearly the synagogue had locked itself down. And we now, thankfully, live in a world where we have a law around this, the Terrorism Protection of Premises Act, which gives clear guidance on how people should respond to terrorist attacks. And the most important guidance on that is a very simple plan of whether you can lock down your premises, whether you can evacuate people into it, whether you can communicate, and whether you can evacuate. But those things keep people safe.
But the kind of the toxic debate around all of this for the last 2 years does not help.
It definitely doesn't. And, you know, we will see those adverse, ideologically driven narratives continue. And it's the job of police officers, security services to try and navigate their way through that noise and find the perpetrators and arrest them and take them out of action.
Nick Aldworth, thank you very much indeed. Let's go back to Jackie in Manchester. Jackie.
Thanks, Matt. Now, this is a very diverse community, many cultures, many faiths, and the devastation felt by the Jewish community is shared by others. Our communities editors, Darshna Soni, is with me now. That's right, isn't it?
That's correct. And one of the things that struck me today, though, Jackie, is speaking to Jewish people, many said they were shocked by what happened, but sadly not surprised. As you say, this is an area with a rich and varied history of different communities, long settled in Manchester, living side by side. But since the events of October 7th and what's been going on in Gaza, there has been a tension here, a sense that tensions are rising. And whilst, of course, we don't know what motivated this attacker, we're waiting to find out more information from counter-terrorism police. A lot of people I spoke to today say they had long feared that international events could spill onto the streets here. And many people said they pointed to things like the nature of public discourse at the moment, the fractious times that we're living in, the rhetoric. And there was a feeling that this needs to be toned down, that we need political and religious leadership. Now, the synagogue here already had security in place, many synagogues here, and sadly their worst fears came to pass today. But whilst there has been much anger and upset, I also found a determination that those who would seek to divide shouldn't be allowed to win.
These are tumultuous times in global affairs. There have long been concerns that international conflicts could spill onto the streets of Britain. And so, although the motive is still unclear, outside the synagogue today, a sense of shock, but not surprise. We spoke to Rob, who was inside the synagogue when it was attacked.
I was in the synagogue this morning when the event happened. So I think I'm still, it's still a period of shock because you don't think things like this happen on your doorstep. And I can't speak for the wider community because I think with things like this, it takes time for it to seep in.
Manchester has a long and rich history of interfaith relations, Jewish and Muslim communities living and working side by side. But there's been an anxiety here in the last 2 years, ever since the events of October the 7th.
I'm Jewish and absolutely terrified. And our neighbour across the road, he goes to the synagogue and he was telling us what was going on. And it's just absolutely frightening because I'm scared for my own safety and my mum's safety. So many people down that road taking pictures, they don't realise the impact it's putting on the Jewish community now.
The rise of social media, the fractious nature of public discourse, the language of some politicians, all have a part to play, according to Kezra Shiraz.
This is horrific, what has happened today. It's a backward step for all of us. Totally distressed by it because we spent 30-odd years bringing communities together, working in different communities.
For decades, she's worked with various organisations, hoping to bring about a better understanding between faiths.
Does what happened suggest that all of that interfaith work hasn't worked, though, because of all the hatred that we're seeing?
It's politics, it's what's happening abroad. This has led to Islamophobia, this has also led to anti-Semitism, and it's bringing a division to our society. So I think the politicians, the decision makers, they need to get their act together.
The attack takes place on the holiest day of the Jewish calendar, which is Yom Kippur.
And on that religious day, a quiet determination to remember all that binds their communities together, despite those who are determined to divide.
We're quite a cultured community. There's, my neighbour's Muslim, my other neighbour's Sikh, my neighbour after that's Jewish, my neighbour after that is Christian.
This is a tremendously proud multicultural area, neighbourhood, where despite the external problems in the world, people look out for each other, communities get on well, they intermingle effectively together, and that is the vision for me that I would like to take forward.
And that's the vision that many are holding on to on this, a day set aside for reflection.
Darshna Soni there. Well, I'm joined now by Labour's Graham Stringer, who's been the MP for this area since 1997, and before that he was the leader of Manchester City Council. Thanks very much for joining us this evening. You know this area very well, you know the people very well. What have they been saying to you today about this attack?
Well, I used to live within a few hundred yards of here, so I do know this, even this part of my constituency better than the rest of it. People are upset. They know we live in a multicultural, varied religions operate and worship here, and they want that to continue. They want the terrible things that have happened today to be a spur for better inter-community, inter-religious relationships. And there's been work done over a number of years, but the Israeli-Gaza conflict has made the Jewish community frightened, and when I talk to the Muslim community who live in this area just down the road, they've been angry and frightened. Both communities have been angry and
So you do recognise that tension Darshna was talking about in her
and
piece?
people have got on well before, but it's increased since the attack on the Israeli communities in Israel and Israel's response.
How do you deal with that?
Well, I think there are a number of ways. One is there needs to be real support for helping inter-community relationships, not just saying it, giving real support. There needs to be more policing, which the Prime Minister's promised. But thirdly, as I've done interviews today, one thing that has occurred to me that everybody can do, your viewers, everybody else, since the Gaza conflict started, it has become accepted to make anti-Semitic remarks around middle-class dinner tables and in universities and elsewhere. And I think, like some years ago, we had to call out people for making anti-gay remarks, anti-black remarks. People of goodwill now have to say when people are making anti-Semitic remarks.
There has to be a clear distinction between what is supporting...
Precisely. What's going on in Gaza and the people, the Jewish community and the Muslim community who live here. We shouldn't be importing problems from the Middle East. People can have their views about it, but we should be saying we live here and we have to get on with each other.
But that interfaith work that has been ongoing has been wounded by the events of the last 2 years, and a terrible attack like this makes reaching out across any divide harder, doesn't it?
Yes, but it makes it more important to do it, and it makes it more important for everybody to do it in conversations wherever they take place. There's a terrible amount of anti-Semitism going on in our universities and other places. The police have taken a judgment when people are making anti-Semitic chants on pro-Gaza, pro-Palestinian demonstrations, not to intervene. And I understand it's difficult, but we should be making it absolutely clear from Parliament, from the security services and everybody that that isn't acceptable.
And it is clear that those people who say, well, we are just supporting the Palestinian people, but there is a very clear distinction between doing that and language that is anti-Semitic.
That's right. There are people with genuine views about Israel and what they're doing, and they're completely entitled to those views. What they're not entitled to do is chant anti-Semitic slogans, and I've heard it myself on seeing demonstrations in London.
I mean, Darshna in her report there was talking to a Muslim worker who has done interfaith work round here. She says all politicians need to watch their language to curb hate and to solve the Gaza conflict, essentially. That issue of language from politicians is really key, isn't it? Setting the standard.
Absolutely. On this issue and every other issue, I think politicians of all sides need to tone it down. I believe politics is about arguing with common facts and trying to come to a solution, not calling people names. So yes, it is up to politicians to take the heat out of this and other vitriolic disputes.
And just very briefly, Keir Starmer today made a very powerful speech saying, you know, Britain will wrap its arms around the Jewish community and say, you will be safe here. Do you think they will believe him?
I think they will wait and see. They respect what Keir's done in terms of getting rid of anti-Semitism within the Labour Party, but they want more, and I understand why they want more, so they'll wait and see.
Graham Stringer, thank you very much.